Hi everyone, in today's video, we will describe an artwork about dragon in our Easy store and then talk about more art meaning and folklores in various countries related to dragons. The photos are mainly the items in our Easy store for your review. The item is a high-quality open-work Chinese white Hetian jade statue with Guan Yin and dragon. The dimension is 4.72 inches by 4.72 inches by 2.36 inches. Guan Yin, wearing high headdress and a long flowing robe, sits on a rocky base. A violet dragon is around her obediently. The item is hollow carved with a complete white Hetian jade, which is pure, white, greasy, and glossy. The item is an invaluable treasure. The statue's motif is called Guan Yin riding a dragon, or the dragon had Guan Yin or Guan Yin descending in the starry night and catching the dragon. It's one of the 33 incarnations of Guan Yin old Sataba. A legend was said in the East China Sea, a monster with a dragon head and turtle body often endangers the world. Guan Yin, old Sataba, was compassionate and subdued the monster in the starry light. She jumped on the back of the dragon-head monster and showed her treasure face. Since then, the people live a peaceful life. The statue represents Guan Yin's boundless power and blesses people to live and work in peace and contentment. Now let's talk about more folklores about dragon in the whole world. Of all mythological creatures, the dragon is surely the best to know. Virtually every culture in the world has its dragon myths, and countless stories have been told of its origins, history, and of its defeat at the hands of dragon slayers. The dragon slain by St. George is perhaps the most typical and consistent in its imagery. Dragons found in the bestiarians of heraldry echo it very closely. In each instance, it has bat wings, a barbed and often poisonous tail, and it breathes fire. It's depicted thus in numerous English folktales and is often portrayed in Christian churches or in the many paintings that describe St. George in the act of slaying the creature. In most of this, the dragon is usually represented as a far smaller creature than its more ancient forebears. Most British dragons are really worms, a name that comes from Scandinavia tradition. These creatures are windless, generally have lengthy bodies and poisonous rather than fiery breath. Dragons and worms have several traits in common. They tend to be scaly, haunt wells or pools, and have a deep attraction to maidens and princesses. Both creatures are known to hoard treasure which they have either gathered for themselves or inherited, becoming guardians by chance. All are extremely hard to kill. It's generally accepted that the myth of the dragon grew out of the remains of extinct dinosaurs discovered in ancient times and believed to belong to magical or unearthly creatures. Details such as their fiery breath and wily nature were added afterwards. Artifacts depicting dragons of one kind or another have been found as early as the 4th millennium BC. Excavations in Pakistan and China have unearthed objects decorated by winged snakes, while a cylinder seal dating to the late 2nd century BC shows a creature which is not far in shape from the traditional idea of the dragon. The word dragon derives from the ancient Greek drakonta or drakon, which means to watch or to look at, suggesting that even at that point in time, the notion of a dragon as a guardian was already established. In the Greek myth, it is a dragon that guards the golden apples of the Hesperides, while in European tradition, it is usually crouched upon a vast mountain of treasure. The Latin word for dragon is draco, and in classical Roman art, the draco is generally depicted as a vast serpent with wings resembling those of a bat. Pliny the Elder, Inca's historian Naturalis, AD 77, gives an account of dragons in the land of Ethiopia, describing them as perhaps 16 feet in length and living primarily off the flesh of elephants. The story is told that they twined themselves together to form a huge living raft and then sailed across to the Arabian Peninsula. These dragons were said to possess a stone called the Dracotius, which was lodged in the brain. In medieval times, alchemists sought this with great diligence, as they were believed to be an essential ingredient in the creation of the elixir of life. The most ancient stories relating to the dragon make it a power that must be defeated or bound by god or hero. These cosmic battles, which date back to the earliest times, include the story of the Egyptian Horus and the Typhon, the Babylonian Marduk and the Tiamat, the Greek Apollo and the Python, and the Greece-Roman Hercules and the Hydra, and many more. Slaying the dragon often disguises a deeper struggle between light and darkness, with the dragon usually symbolizing the dark, and its slayer light and goodness. Out of them, the tradition of the dragon is guardians of treasure, a just reward for those brave enough and strong enough to overcome these mighty adversaries. For other traditions about dragon is guardians of treasure, a just reward for those brave enough and strong enough to overcome these mighty adversaries. Early references to dragon-like creature turn up in Babylonian, Egyptian, Chinese, and Japanese accounts, as well as classical Greek and Roman sources. In the accounts, the dragon is not the evil creature of later mythology, but often a great serpent, which represents the primal matter of creation itself, or the life-giving waters of ocean. In this context, its wings are described as sending forth the air, which is the breath of life. It's also seen as a messenger of the sky gods. Later, this symbolism changes. Perhaps with the shift from paganism to Christianity, the dragon represents the ancient power of the gods, sometimes become darker and more negative. The 4th century BC, Greek playwright Euripides was one of the first classical writers to describe a dragon breathing fire, while in the Old Testament, Moses mentions fiery serpents and Isaiah speaks of high-flying, fire-breathing creatures which resemble dragons. In Egyptian myth, Apophis is a dragon of darkness who has to be overcome every day by the sun god Ra. In Roman myth, the goddess Ceres flies through the heavens in a chariot drawn by 2 dragons, and later lends the idea to the hero Triptolemus to enable him to distribute corn to the human race. Medusa, though not a dragon herself, in one version of the story, escaped from Jason in a chariot drawn by a winged dragon. Apollo may be seen as a type of dragon slayer who kills the python of Delphi, though the latter is more a serpent than a traditional dragon. One of the earliest stories featuring a dragon of cosmic proportions is found in the Babylonian epic of creation, composed during the 2nd century BC. Here we learn of the struggle between the god Abzu, god of the primordial waters beneath the earth, and his consort Tiamat, who was a dragon of the sea, against their son Ea, the unknown god of wisdom. Ea fought and killed Abzu and replaced him. He then engendered the hero Marduk on his consort and prepared for war against his mother. To swell the ranks of her forces in the coming war, Tiamat gave birth to a host of dreadful creatures. Nerzapole, giant snakes, sharp of tooth and unsparing of fang, she filled their bodies with venom instead of blood. She cloaked ferocious dragons with a fearsome race, and made them bear mantles of radiance, made them godlike. Biblical tradition takes the idea of the dragon and marries it with ancient images from Middle Eastern belief and tradition. Even the serpent of the Garden of Eden is sometimes referred to as a dragon, while in the book of Revelation, a red dragon with multiple crowned heads appears. Its tail is so great that it sweeps a third of the stars from the sky, throwing them upon the earth. A great war then ensues between the beast and the archangel Michael and his angels, who cast it down upon the earth. 3 unclean spirits, like frogs, come out from the dragon's mouth, which are said to be devils, working false miracles. Finally, the dragon is thrown into a bottomless pit, where it will remain for at least 1,000 years, imprisoned by an angel with a key and a chain. In Hindu tradition, the dragon represents manifest power and the spoken word, and is a representative of both Aruna and Soma. The great god Indra slew a dragon named Vishnu in order to release the primordial waters and make the earth fruitful. It is without doubt in China that the dragon achieves its most complex mythological and symbolic status. Here it represents the highest spiritual power and is emblematic of the representatives of such power on earth. Dragons are said to influence every aspect of life, and in the context is one of the 12 symbolic creatures of the zodiac. Among its many other attributes, it's known to represent the sun, the heavens, and the fertilizing rain. Often, dragons are represented as living in elaborate palaces above a ground or beneath the sea, and there is evidence that in ancient times, offerings were made to them. Oriental dragons are also known as shapeshifters, and they can make themselves invisible at will. They have many different characteristics, some good, some bad. The celestial dragon, Tianlang, is a guardian of the home of the gods and sometimes represented as holding up the sky. Fu Tian, the imperial dragon, is a guardian of treasure. One very specific description shows that the dragon had become acknowledged as a hybrid being and that every aspect of it has symbolic meaning. It is said that the dragon's horns resemble those of a stag. His head is that of a camel, his eyes those of the demon, his neck that of the snake, his belly that of a clam, his scales those of a carp. His claws are those of an eagle, his soles those of a tiger, his ears those of the cow. In both China and Japan, traditionally the dragon was able to change itself into a bird. In a monastery in Kyoto, there is a painting depicting a composite creature, half dragon, half bird. In Japan, the dragon myth evolved its own pattern. An ancient story tells how a dragon formed from part of the fire god Kaguzuchi. It produced rain and snow in response to the prayers of men. And as in both China and India, Japanese river gods took the form of dragons and were believed to bring rain. But it was only with the introduction of Chinese and Indian dragon myths that Japanese rivers became filled with dragons. There is a story. An ancient Japanese story tells how the daughter of the sea god happened to notice a beautiful young man looking into a well near the palace gates and invited him into her father's realm. The sea king's daughter married the youth, who was also a prince, and after 3 years in the kingdom of the sea, they returned to earth so that the prince's pregnant bride could give birth to a son and heir. The prince built her a palace in which she could give birth, but the princess begged him not to watch her. As so often in stories such as this, he could not resist and saw that she turned into a sea dragon to give birth. Angry and ashamed, the princess deserted her son and husband and returned to the sea forever. In British folklore, there are several stories relating to winged, fiery creatures, one being that of the dragon. One is the dragon of Kingston, who was eventually choked to death by a giant boulder that rolled down from a ridge into his mouth as he opened it to belch forth flames. The dragon of Wantley in Lancashire was another dragon of the kind. An account of this creature from legends and traditions of Lancashire is typical of the kind of story. The serpent of Handel in Yorkshire was half dragon and half serpent, since it had fiery breath and a venomous sting. It was a great devourer of maidens until a young man named Scar killed it when he set out to rescue a year's daughter. The dragon that haunted Winletter Rock in Derbyshire was probably the devil, who had taken this form in order to prey on the local population. The evil creature was finally driven off by a monk who stood upon a rock with his arms outstretched in the shape of a cross. His concentration was apparently so great that his feet sank into the rock and left impressions that could still be seen in the 19th century. Apparently, the monk did not kill the dragon, but drove it away. He took refuge down a mine in the Derbyshire hills, and the waters have been said to taste sulphurous and be slightly warm ever since, evidence of the dragon's presence. The story is in this way. The dragon was a terror of all the countryside. He had 14 iron teeth and a long sting in his tail. Besides his strong, rough hide and fearful wings, he ate trees and cattle, and once he ate 3 young children at one meal, fire-breathed from his nostrils, and for a long time no man dared come near him. Near the dragon's den there lived a strange knight named More of Moorhall, of whom it was said that so great was his strength that he had once seized a horse by its mane and tail, and swung it round and round till it was dead, because it had angered him. Then said the tale he had eaten the horse, all except its head. At the last, the people of the place came together to Moorhall, and with tears implored the knight to free them from the fearful monster which was devouring all their food and making them go in terror of their lives. They offered him all their remaining goods if he could do them this service, but the knight said he wanted nothing except one black-haired maid of 16 to anoint him for the battle at night and array him in his armor in the morning. When this was promised, he went to Sheffield and found these smiths, who made him a suit of armor set all over with iron spikes, each 5 or 6 inches in length. Then he hid in the well where the dragon used to drink, and as it stooped to the water, the knight put up his head with a shout and struck it a great blow in the face. But the dragon was upon him, hardly checked by the blow, and for 2 days and night they fought without either inflicting a wound upon the other. At last, as the dragon flung himself at More with the intention of tossing him high into the air, More succeeded in planting a kid in the middle of its back. This was a vital spot. The iron spike drove into the monster so far that it spun round and round in agony, groaning and roaring fiercely. But in a few minutes all was over. It collapsed into a helpless heap and died. Dragons are less prevalent in Celtic tradition, despite the importance of the red dragon or the drake Gotch in Welsh lore. A story is told of a gypsy boy who came to a village within a day of the time when every man save one had been devoured by an especially ferocious creature. The sole survivor pleaded with the gypsy to leave before the dragon came back. But as they spoke, a huge shadow fell over the earth, and the dragon landed right in front of them. As the monster approached, the gypsy boy held up his hand and said that if it tried to eat him, it would choke. The dragon expressed its doubts as to the truth of this and suggested a test. Then it picked up a huge stone and crushed it to dust. The gypsy bowed and asked the dragon if it could squeeze water out of a stone. Then before the dragon understood what was happening. The gypsy picked up a muslin bag full of cheese and began to squeeze the liquid from it. Impressed, the dragon decided to befriend the gypsy. This kind of trickery continued for some time, and in each case, the boy got the better of his adversary. Finally, having pretended friendship with the dragon, the boy invited it back to his camp. There, they were met by a horde of naked gypsy children. When the dragon asked who they were, the boy said they were all his children and that they were so hungry he thought the dragon might make a good supper for them. At that, the dragon flew away and was never seen again. Dragons are particularly popular in the folklore and legends of Russia, and most conform to the classical type. Such natural phenomena as eclipses of the sun and moon are widely accepted to be caused by dragons. Though when the heavenly orbs reappeared, this was taken as a clear sign that if even such mighty creatures as dragons could not withstand the power of the heavens, then mankind could survive them also. Most of the dragons in Russian legends and folk stories are less intelligent than their counterparts elsewhere in the world. The appearance of the dragon can vary a great deal according to which part of the world it comes from. In some places, it has a head that is reptilian, while in Indian, it sometimes has a head of elephant, an lion or bird of prey. In the Middle East, it is usually serpentine and may have many heads. The color of the dragon ranges from green, red, or black to yellow, blue, or white. Dragons seem to love ruins and are often found in ancient castles, palaces, or cities that have fallen into ruins. They are also found in swamps, deserts, and caverns, on mountains, and in the forest. The story of the assault on Dragon's lair is almost as fixed as the form of the dragon itself. In almost every instance, the hero, once he has found a way to kill the dragon, ends by cutting off its head, tongue, feet, or tail, often to prove that he has killed the creature, but sometimes because it carries power of its own. Thus, in the Teutonic myth of the hero, Siegfried, having defeated the dragon, it cuts out its tongue, getting some of its saliva on his lips in the process. Thereafter, he can understand the language of birds and animals. In Norse and Germanic tradition, we find one of the prime stories of the dragon in epic poem Beowulf. In the oldest traditions of the Norse people, Nidhogger, one full of hatred, is the dragon of death, which drinks the blood of the dead and eats corpses. According to the Norseman Snorri's Edda, it is said that Nidhogg will survive the end of the world and live in the one that will replace it. Elsewhere, Nidhogger is described as living under the roofs of the world tree Yggdrasil. A squirrel acts as a messenger between the dragon and a great eagle which sits at the top of the tree, sowing discord in the human race. The Midgard serpent lives at the center of the earth or in the ocean, and was created from the eyebrows of the primal giant Ymir. Though some sources describe him as offspring of the black-hearted trickster god Loki, Norse mythology describes this creature as living in a primeval ocean that surrounds the world. Later, Thor is said to have used an ox skull as a hook to catch the great serpent, dispatching it with his mighty hammer. In some versions, Thor himself dies as a result of breathing the poisonous breath of the serpent. The dragon is found on the banners of many different peoples, including the Persians, Romans, Welsh, and Norse. This may have contributed to its fierce and warlike nature. The myth of the dragon continues to grow, with the literary works of J.R.R. Tolkien presenting the memorable Smaug, the Golden, and Annie McCaffrey's Perm series, adding an entire new line to the story. In the shape of her dragon riders. The magical properties of dragons include the ability to guard treasure and knowledge, to usher in new cycles of time, to shape and sculpt the earth, and to endure to the ending of the world. Welcome to visit Guan Gallery for your favorite art items. Thank you.